This is all the graphs you need to know, and hopefully you'll be able to come away with some good review for you. So the first one that we ever did in terms of micro was the production possibility curve. So your production possibility curve can look two different ways, right? Your production possibility curve can be perfectly straight like this, or it can be bowed out like this. And the production possibility curve that you're going to have, so in your production possibility curve, you're either going to have good X and good Y, something like that, or you might have like capital goods, consumer goods. They like to throw that one in there too. So if your slope is like this, a constant slope, that means that good X and good Y can basically, whatever you're using for them, they can, all the materials that you would need can be used for either good interchangeably. If you get to good, so this is like a constant opportunity cost. So that's a good one to know there. So this is a constant opportunity cost. For this one, we have an increasing opportunity cost because as we get closer to the edges, as I get closer to X or closer to Y, it's harder for me to be able to make that the last units of those goods, right? In the middle, it kind of looks like this, right? It's like, I could do either one. But as I start to get closer to making the last units of good X, I have to give up a significant amount of good Y, right? To get that last unit of good X. So that is why it's an increasing opportunity cost. Closer you get to the edges, harder to make that particular thing. The questions they ask on the test, they will ask things like, oh, what happens in here? You are not using all of your resources in the best possible way, free riding, free lunch, something like that. They always want you to be out here on the line. That is when you're using all of your resources in the best possible way. And if you can come out here at some point, like, so let's say this is point A, that's point B, and this is point C. At point C, you are beyond your production possibility capabilities, right? You're going outside of that. The only way you can get out here is to see something like a shift, right? And you can see that, but what's going to happen is you're going to have to see an increase in something, increase in technology, increase in productivity, something like that, that's going to move the whole line out. Sometimes they've done ones where we only see a shift in good X. So then you do something like this, where it's like, okay, I can still make the same amount of good Y, but I'm making more of good X because something happened. New technology makes good X easier to get, and that would be about all we can do for production possibility curves. I don't know what else they could really ask you. Remember, you can achieve outside of your production possibility curve with trade, but your production possibility curve does not shift with trade. It is just you're able to consume outside. So that would be curve one from production possibility curves. Pretty easy. Usually those questions are one of the first ones you'll see on the test. The next one we have is supply and demand. So in your supply and demand from section 2, remember your axes are just labeled price and quantity, our upward sloping supply curve or downward sloping demand curve, and then you're going to see something happen where they're going to shift one of these things. You should go over your shifters. Remember, your supply shifters are Trice and your demand shifters are Merit. Go review those. But then if something happens and demand shifts out to the right, make sure you're looking for something where there's an arrow going out to the right, you're pushing this out to the right, all your labels are good, and then again, it's just something like P1, P2, Q1, Q2. And, show those things with arrows. If you have to put arrows on the test or something like that, those are all good things to have on there. The only time things get weird with a supply-demand curve is if there's two things happening at literally the exact same time. So if that happens, again, so in this case, let's say demand has shifted to the right, but now we're seeing supply shift to the left. We are going to see a higher price for sure in terms of P3, but the way I drew it, like, who knows, you might be back at Q1 or something like that. Remember, in that case, double shifts, there's always something is indeterminate. So whether it is Um, in this case, it's going to be quantity is unknown, but sometimes if you shift them the other, like both the same way or something like that, it might be price is unknown. So don't get confused by a double shifter. Just remember, if anything happens at the exact same time, look for the one that says like, oh, something is unknown or something is indeterminate or something is a question mark. A lot of times that graph would be, it might not even be a graph, but you can use your scratch paper to draw it out even when you're answering a multiple choice question. Anytime you can see that visually, I think you're going to get the right answer. So again, review your choices and merits, but also know that if you get a double shifter in there, there's going to be something unknown. So then we move on to like the firm type graphs. So the first firm we did was perfect competition. So perfect competition took our supply and demand graph that we have. So this is our market. And then over here, we went to our firm. And in perfect competition, we are getting our price from our market. So perfect competition, remember your price, you are a price taker. So you're getting your price from the firm, or from the market, I mean. So the market's going to come along at a price like this. So your firm price is horizontal, okay? And that is our Mr. DARP line, MRDARP. If you're throwing labels on, make sure you label all that stuff. Here's my supply line, here's my demand line, here's my price. In the market, it's just price and quantity. A lot of times they'll say put like PM for market, put QM for price, and they're gonna have you label everything. So whether this is you actually drawing it or whether it's online where you're just like putting stuff in and they have boxes or X's, they might say, what is X1? Well, it's going to be the price in the market. What's X2? Oh, the quantity in the market. If the firm is experiencing just normal profit, remember we have our marginal cost curve, which is sort of that Nike swoosh shape, right? So draw that in. We already have our marginal revenue line, which is our demand line and price coming across. And then all we really have to do is put in our average total cost. So our average total cost, if this was, let's just say we were making a profit at the beginning. So that means my per unit marginal revenue is greater than my cost. So I would come down here. Remember, you have to bottom out your average total cost curve on your marginal cost curve. So when you're doing that, be specific as you're putting that in. Go to where MC equals MR. MC equals MR is going to be true for all of your graphs. So MC equals MR, go there, put your pencil on the line, right? Come down, get our quantity in the firm, right? Here's our price for the firm. And then I can just shade in my profit, right? It's going to be the difference between here and here. I come across, I shade that in, and there's my profit. Now, that line should be, if your average total cost curve is really down, this point, right, your average total cost minimized should be a little bit lower than where you come across. So there's my profit. Well, what happens? As soon as I see profit, if I am a firm out there who knows what's like, I don't know, I see this going on, I'm going to enter, right? So the market is going to see people come in, and it's going to come in right to the bottom of my ATC. So I'm going to see a new price here, right at the bottom of my average total cost curve. I'm going to see suppliers come into the market. My price is going to come down, right? So I got a new P2 here. I got a new Q2 here. I got a new QM2, I guess, let's go with, and PM2. So because there was a profit over here, this new price came across. And it's going to come across right to the bottom of my ATC, because the bottom of my ATC means I'm making a normal profit. So a couple of labels here. This is my normal profit, where your price is equal to your ATC at MC equals MR, right? That's what we want to look for. Over here, where MC equaled MR, my price was actually greater than my ATC. So that's why I had a little bit of profit. But normal profit is here. Remember, normal profit is good enough. That's all we're looking for. And we're always going to go to where MC equals MR. So I have a new Mr. DARP line. My new Mr. DARP line, my MR and my MC are going to cross here. So that's why I'm going to produce there, come down, get my quantity, come over, get my price, and I'm going to realize, oh, I can't go up or down because I hit the bottom of my average total cost curve. Again, this is going to be productively efficient. So they always ask efficiency questions. So in this case, we are productively efficient because I am at the bottom of my ATC, and it is also going to be allocatively efficient. Allocatively efficient. Now you can define that in a couple different ways. One way is there's no deadweight loss. So when you look in the market here, we're coming out to supply and demand. There's no deadweight loss. Even here, there's no deadweight loss. You could also say it is where our price is equal to our marginal cost. So price equals marginal cost. That is perfect competition. There's the questions they could ask you. Now, they might say something like, another thing that they like to do here is they like to just say something like, well, what if we tax this particular item or something like that? A lump sum tax does nothing. And the reason a lump sum tax does nothing is a lump sum tax acts just like a fixed cost to you. You're just going to pay it. It's just like one lump sum. It's a $1,000 tax. It doesn't change anything here because, as you recall, all these things are marginal things. And a fixed cost isn't going to change any of that marginal stuff that we're doing. A per unit tax would change some things. So a per unit tax will affect our supply and demand, because if I'm going to tax, let's say, the supplier, remember, in a tax problem, adding a tax in is going to actually make a supply plus tax line, and it's going to raise all these things up. So if for some reason they give you, hey, we're going to lump sum tax it, what's going to happen? Your answer is going to be nothing's going to happen. If you do something like a per unit tax, then you're going to have to say, okay, well, this is going to shift. When this shifts, remember, my supply line and my marginal cost line are the same. So when my supply line moves due to a tax, my marginal cost line should move too, and then the whole thing is just going to basically move up on us. So that's how that's going to work. Okay, that's perfect competition. I don't know if they could ask you anything else. That's a lot of stuff right there to review, but that's basically what we're going with in terms of perfect competition.